Okay, good evening, everybody. This is a special meeting of the Gainesville City Commission. It's November 24th, 2020. We have one item on our agenda tonight, final EO investigation results. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Okay, moved by Hayes Santos, seconded by, was that you, seconded by Ariola. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? That motion passes. Okay. Yes? Not for administrative items, no. Not for administrative items? Correct. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We all, I think it was about a week ago, received a final report from an outside law firm following up on an equal opportunity, actually a couple equal opportunity complaints that were filed through our Office of Equity and Inclusion. In that report, there were no findings of discrimination. There was a finding of retaliation from an employee who did not get a promotion that she had applied for. So I want to start out by saying I understand from the accuser's perspective why she may have felt retaliated against. She was a finalist for the job and did not receive it, was evaluated highly, but second to the eventual recipient of the job offer. I've read the report several times, and I will say from my reading, the findings of retaliation were inconclusive. There were some inconsistencies with the report. There was the fact that the interview committee did rank another candidate higher than the person making the accusation. There was also a matter of the assistant city manager who was the hiring officer having reservations and suggesting that the accuser be put on probation to start her tenure in the position, which gave me pause and I believe gave the city manager pause as well. Ultimately, I want all of our charter officers to have the ability to hire the right people for the right job, especially people that are in positions of significant authority and responsibility within the organization. Ultimately, it is up to each charter officer, and it is their responsibility, and it is they who will be held accountable if those people in those positions do not perform their job to the level that is expected by us here at the dais, as well as our neighbors. What I am looking at today as a way forward, I see this as an opportunity. I first of all, in this circumstance, as well as the charter officer evaluations that we are starting right now and we'll have a meeting about in January, am responsible for looking at the entire body of work of our 6 charter officers. So I look at the body of work of Mr. Feldman and his leadership through the COVID pandemic, his leadership of improving and enhancing our police and our fire departments, the reorganization and path forward for the GCRA, the incredible amount of work that is being done on housing, something that every community is struggling with, but that we are putting first and foremost, and his recognition and his work towards organizational change. In this organization, we do many things incredibly well. There are also many areas that can use significant improvement. And that is one of many reasons I initially supported the hiring of Mr. Feldman, because I felt like his experience and his approach would allow for us to begin that difficult process of organizational improvement. This situation has brought many issues to the fore. We need, first of all, an improved process for any accusations against our charter officers. We've been around this track several times now. It is not a productive method, and I am confident that there is a way that we can do this that will maintain accountability while improving that process. I also believe this gives us the opportunity to do a full culture audit of our organization. I have talked with our auditor about this, and she is optimistic, even enthusiastic about the value that this could bring to the city of Gainesville. And I will look to get support on the commission to alter the current audit plan to include a culture audit in this current fiscal year. I also believe that there are opportunities to improve the performance of Mr. Feldman. And I do think it is important that we work on some professional development goals and standards for the city manager, especially as it relates to hiring and promoting within our city policies. I very much believe that out of adversity, we grow stronger. We will emerge from this, as well as all the other challenges we have, a better organization, and I am excited about that prospect. We have too much important work to do as a city, too much we've committed to, for us to lose sight of those larger goals now. So we have some work to do tonight, commissioners, and then we have much more difficult and challenging work as we leave tonight and work our way towards the new year. Thank you for indulging me. I very much appreciate it, and I would love to hear my colleagues' thoughts. After we have a motion on the floor, we will then take public comment. And we'll start with Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholly agree with your comments that you made. If I would add one, it's that I think Mr. Feldman and the hiring process overall went ahead with the correct choice, and at least in light of our goals and mission on equity, that we hire diversity in our highest ranks, and that we look for the best people for Gainesville. And I believe that process did that. That said, if you would indulge me in a motion, I have one ready, or if you'd like me to wait until the rest of our colleagues have spoken. But I do have one prepared that covers the vast majority of what you've asked for, but I'd be willing to amend it given any comments our colleagues may have.
Let's wait to hear from everybody, but I will go back to you for a motion since you brought it up first, as is usually my custom. Anybody else? I've seen no lights. Well, perhaps then we, Commissioner Gariola, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have known about these complaints of alleged misconduct for months, and I agree. We have a flaw in our current charter, that once complaints are filed, there is no clear policy in how to handle the conduct of officers. We expect them to be professional in how they do their jobs and to communicate the process of complaints and other corrective action. This reality places charter officers in the position of recommending action to the City Commission, but unless the City Commission meets to approve action, then charter officers are able to act within the purview of their charter. Charters may also share recommendations with each other. After these complaints were filed, I recall that the city manager was advised to take paid leave to allow for a cool-down period following this serious formal complaint. As one of the governing commissioners, I recall that this idea was rejected under the premise that there would be the avoidance of even the appearance of retaliation. Private counsel was hired. Our officer in charge of the investigation, who is empowered by the charter to investigate serious complaints, decided to contract this out to a third party to avoid any conflicts of interest. I'm not sure if that's the exact terminology that she used. And at this point, the City Commission did not discuss enforcing the paid leave cool-down option or any corrective action. So the City Commission, the manager, and our Inclusion and Diversity Officer all had no action except waiting for the investigation into the allegations to conclude. This took time because of the pandemic, and I do believe that the third party stayed within the scope of the allegations stated in their report. In the middle of this investigation, the facts as detailed in the report speak for themselves. There was a supervisor hiring decision made concerning an employee who filed a complaint and the officer under investigation. Since it is not the authority of the commission to interject in those kinds of decisions, it was a hiring process totally up to the officer, who was also aware of the investigation. According to the report and the facts that we've received, Commissioners, I have to say that I am deeply concerned about what I deem to be retaliatory action taken by one of our officers. Furthermore, even if we set aside that finding, the mere facts contained in both reports illustrate to me conduct unbecoming of any employee, let alone a charter officer, which is a position that we must hold to a higher standard of conduct. Having this information on Monday, and being one of the responsible members of holding charter officers accountable for their actions, I decided to take two actions. First, to ask to schedule this special meeting to guarantee that the City Commission discuss how to hold the officer accountable for their conduct. And second, I met with the charter officer and the city attorney to ask the officer for his resignation because, again, in my estimation, by the facts given in the report, I am deeply concerned with the retaliatory action taken by the officer. I find it unbecoming of an officer. I have stated my views. I am interested in hearing what other commissioners have to say because we are all responsible for the governing of charter officers. The City Commission, charter officers, and employees all have a responsibility to set the tone for our government's culture. That responsibility starts at the top, and the buck does stop here. Regardless of what the City Commission decides today regarding the conduct of one officer, we need to commit to changing our government culture for the good. This means structurally, our charter, the role of the mayor and City Commission, and the role of officers and employees. I welcome some of what was said in regards to an organizational audit. I believe that it is the appropriate thing to do. I would like to ask commissioners to understand that from my perspective, I think this is not a question about the officer's job performance. This is not a question about anything other than the conduct that was detailed in the report. And how can we hold our officers to a higher standard? Whether or not the hiring process, again, that is not the question at hand for me today. The question at hand is, how do we hold officers accountable for conduct that must be higher? We must hold a higher standard. And I don't think that any number of accomplishments, any number of decisions justify us looking away from holding people at the city of Gainesville to a high standard of how they conduct themselves and how they treat their employees. Thank you for indulging me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. Is Tanisha Marshall here on the call?
I believe she's out this week.
I'm actually here, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall, for joining us. What I wanted to hear from you, Tanisha Marshall is the director of our Equity and Inclusion Office. And I know from my understanding, there's currently an ongoing investigation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So can you tell us what is the scope or scale of discussion that we are warned here today?
So there, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Commission, there are other pending open complaints that are not being handled by my office, that are being handled by the City Attorney's Office, that have been filed with a federal agency.
So anything we say here today can be used against us in an impending federal investigation as it
That is
relates to
correct.
the facts or the facts of this case.
That is correct.
Okay. So what I want to talk about is the process, Ms. Marshall. If you could tell us what's the process in these type of situations. Can you start from the beginning and walk us through the process and let us know how did we get here today?
Okay, so speaking of the EEOC process, once a complaint is filed with the EEOC, we are notified here at the city that complaint goes to the city attorney's office to provide what's called a position statement. And once the position statement is received, it's reviewed by the investigative staff at EEOC. And once they review that, it can go a number of different ways. And I'm speaking to this because I was a previous EEOC employee. So this could go a few different ways. Once the position statement is provided, they can choose to adopt the findings from our internal report. If they choose to adopt those findings, they would issue a cause determination, in which point they would invite the city to engage in what's called a conciliation process. Conciliation is just another word for settlement. If that goes well, then according to all parties, so EEOC as well as complainant and a complainant's representative, if all goes well in the conciliation process, then the complaint is closed. But if for some reason conciliation fails, because this is a Title VII case, EEOC would not be the agency that would bring forth a lawsuit in this complaint. It would be forwarded to the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and at which point they would decide if they wanted to bring forth a lawsuit against the city of Gainesville. If they decide to bring forth a lawsuit, then a lawsuit ensues. But if they decide not to bring forth a lawsuit at this time, they will issue the complainant what's called a right to sue. And with that right to sue, it will state that a violation was found against the city, and the complainant and their attorney has 90 days to pursue that in court.
So the city of Gainesville will be held liable.
If a violation is found, correct.
And that's with the federal system.
Correct. And it's important to note that the EEOC has what's called a work sharing agreement with the state agency that's responsible for investigating complaints of discrimination. And so once a complaint is filed with the EEOC, it's co-filed with the state. Same as if it's filed with the state, it's co-filed with the EEOC. So once the complaint is dismissed federally, a state right to sue is issued as well.
And what is that again? I didn't understand.
The right to sue letter, it gives complainants the right to proceed in federal court or state court with their complaints.
And how would that reflect the city of Gainesville?
At that point, I can't speak for the city attorney's office, but the city attorney's office would be responsible for trying to defend this complaint in state or federal court. And there is a process prior to an investigation happening, which is called mediation. Complainants can opt to mediate their complaint, but it's voluntary and all parties have to agree to it. So the complainant would have to agree to mediation and the city would have to agree to mediation as well. If things work out in mediation, there is no investigation and the complaint is closed.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall.
You're welcome.
Looking at and just hearing from our director, there's currently an open investigation in the federal realm. Anything we say today regarding the facts of the case will be held against us or used against us in any investigation that's ongoing currently. I've heard that, I was just listening, and one thing that was brought to my attention was that we need to have an improved process against accusations against our charter officers. And I think in this case, that was done when the charter officer allowed a third party to do that. And so what I'm just so discouraged about is, without going into too much detail, is the report itself. There is many things in the report that I find extremely, extremely disturbing to me. And our city deserves better. Our city deserves better. We are all held to a high standard. We are all held accountable for our actions. You have a third party that did an extremely, 8-month investigation, 6-7-month investigation, and the finding or the recommendation was to fire Mr. Lee Feldman. I take this very serious. When we had a third party initiate this investigation, and we currently have an ongoing federal investigation, in addition to another investigation outside of this investigation. Something is seriously wrong here. And I agree, we do need to have a cultural audit in this organization. It starts from the head, it starts with this dais, it starts with us, the commissioners. Some things I saw in the report was extremely disturbing. The Equal Opportunity Office was created it has a purpose. Tanisha Marshall, can you enlighten me on what is the duty, what is the purpose of your office?
So one of our missions is to investigate complaints of employment discrimination. Once we receive those complaints, we do what's called an intake process to see if those complaints meet certain indicia that requires us to take it under the law. Once we get those complaints, we investigate those to see if they fit within what's called the elements of proof to determine if any type of discrimination or harassment or retaliation has ensued.
Why was this office created?
Well, I think originally this office, before it became its own independent charter, again, was responsible for investigating complaints of discrimination. But I think one of the reasons why it became a charter is because it needed autonomy to be able to investigate those complaints without any type of influence over the results of any type of investigation. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I will say that no process is perfect. I have not been shy about saying that as a charter myself, that I don't think I should be the one that should be investigating other charter officers, because again, that is a peer, which is why I opted to contract that out to a third party investigator, simply because one, it's a peer, but two, to omit anything that could be considered or have the appearance of any type of conflict of interest. Complaints, again, are those things that are unavoidable. I think from the management side, we probably see them a bit more often when complaints are filed, but when they get to this level, it's probably that the commission doesn't see these types of complaints as often. But I will tell you, in rank and file, this is something that we see, and we do have a screening mechanism in place to tell whether those complaints are some that need to go through our process. Again, this is one that I opted to contract out to a third party. So again, I could avoid any type of appearance of having any potential conflict down the road. But again, our office was created on making sure that we enforce not only city policies, but our policies mirror federal and state laws. So the elements that we use to come up with findings for our complaints are the same ones that the EEOC and the state use. Like the elements of proof are the same across the board. But having that autonomy is definitely what we need. So there is no influencing of investigations.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. I think she just stated it best. This office was created for a purpose. It has a purpose. If someone feels that they are, if they're feeling that they are not being treated fairly, they have a vehicle to go to, and that's the Equal Opportunity Office or the Office of Inclusion, to have their voices heard. This investigation was an independent investigation. That's all I'm going to say right now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the statements that you made, Mr. Mayor, and Commissioner Sacco as well. And I would support the path that you laid forward, Mr. Mayor. And I would also support Commissioner Sacco putting a motion on the floor. I don't believe retaliation occurred, mainly for one conversation I had. I spoke with Mr. Feldman before he knew the scores. I asked who he was going to choose, and he said he was going to choose the person who had the highest rank coming from the selection committee. I asked, even if that's Diane Wilson, and he said, yes, if that's the highest ranked person, he'll go with that person. He went with the highest ranked person that came out of the selection committee, and that's what he said he was going to do. And that's why I do not believe retaliation occurred, because he set out a path with going with the highest ranked in the selection committee, and that's what he did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I wouldn't mind hearing the motion before I speak. Thank you.
Sure. Commissioner Sacco.
Pull it back up, sorry. The motion would be that we acknowledge that we have received this report. We request that the mayor recommend and review a professional development program for the city manager to ensure consistency with the adopted core values of the city.
Maybe just move it a little closer.
My bad. Is this better?
It's almost like you're wearing a mask or something.
Sorry. That the city commission acknowledge that we received a report, that we find it inconclusive at the moment. We request that the manager recommend and review a professional development program for the city manager to ensure consistency with the adopted core values of the city. Second, that the city auditor, in consultation with other charter officers, recommend a policy to the city commission on how to deal with complaints regarding charter officers. I believe the county has adopted a policy, and the auditor could glean from them how their process is going and maybe find inspiration. Third, that the city auditor, in consultation with the other charter officers, review a policy on authority to hire by charter officers and suggest modification to the procedure if there is an unclear or contradictory procedure. And fourth, that the city auditor propose a cultural audit to the city commission for the entire organization.
Second.
Okay, motion was made by Commissioner Saka, seconded by Commissioner Hayes Santos. Commissioner Johnson.
Mayor, I'm going to take everybody through a flow chart of how I thought about this. We're here today because we have a report and the findings of an investigation. This investigation is 1,600 pages with the backup and the exhibits. This is how big it is. I've read most of it. It's a lot. I've read about 1,000 pages or so, and I've read enough to have a clear thought process about the way that I'm thinking about this. So we have this investigation and the outcome, and then the questions become, one, do you believe the outcome of the investigation? You can either go yes or no on that. If you go no on that, which is, I've heard that from at least 3 of you today, the question becomes why? And I'm going to back up for a minute to say that this 1,600-page document came from an attorney. In my estimation, it was more thorough than I could ever imagine a report to be. And I would hope that all of us have had the opportunity to read all of it, or most of it. So we have the why, we go to no. I've heard a couple of you say why there were inconclusive findings. I would caution us as commissioners, as lay folks, because we hired someone to do this work. Someone professional, someone, and not even someone, there were a few people involved in this that were very experienced in this kind of investigation and work. So I am going to say, yes, I agree with the findings of this. And now we're here because we are supposed to make a determination based upon the findings. And that finding is termination. Now we can either go yes or no with termination. So I'm going to go down the path that some of you all have talked about in the motion that's on the floor. No, we are not going to terminate. We believe in second chances here. Okay. I'm a big believer in second chances. But I also understand that there is a cost to that second chance. And also, there's a question out there about, there's clearly a problem. There's been a problem since before I got here about organizational culture. So I don't necessarily think the question is whether or not we believe there's a problem. I think there's also the question of, does the charter officer believe that there's a problem? Because ultimately, for something to be successful in the outcome, and the outcome that I believe that we all want, that person has got to recognize that there is something wrong. That's the question. Going back to the cost of the second chance, I'm glad, Commissioner Simmons, that you brought that up because that's something that I had not thought about. There is a potential cost to this second chance. And not just with the federal investigation that's happening, but also as a city, the culture that we are talking about, that's so important for us to, I think, fix. This office was created for a reason. We went through the process to get to this place. And we are going to be responsible for making this decision about yes or no. And I gotta tell you that I'm dealing specifically with the facts of retaliation here, but there are also some very deeply, deeply disturbing things in this report that I was very clear, I'm speaking for myself, very clear from the beginning in my first interview about my expectations, about collaboration, about healing the city, about working together, about truth, about honesty, like core values that are not only important to me, but I think should be something that we embody as a city. And I can already tell, how this is going to go down based upon what many of you said. But for the record, I am disturbed by some of the findings. I think that there is a question about whether or not the outcome that we want, whether or not we will get that, because ultimately, we can have all the fancy plans we want to. But if the foundation is quicksand, no matter what we do, we will fail in the long term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Back to Commissioner Simmons.
Wanted to hear that motion again, the first part.
Sorry, it's written down on typing. That the commission acknowledge that it received a report, that the mayor recommend and review a professional development program for the city manager to ensure consistency with the adopted core values of the city.
So I have to ask this question. Based on what I read in the report, are there any of my contemporaries going to excuse themselves from this vote?
There are very narrow statutory limitations on when one can recuse themselves, and I think we would need to ask an attorney what those grounds are. I have not heard anything that would indicate that somebody would be legally allowed to recuse themselves. You would have to show that you'd be receiving some special benefit.
Is there an attorney here? No, city attorney.
I know that we have somebody from the city attorney's office on the call. We'll wait for them to come up. There we go.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. There doesn't seem to be an instance in this case that would rise to recusal of your vote.
That it would?
Would not.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having read the report several times, there are a few things that I want to be specific about. First, I want to say I am not going to, because there's an active complaint with the federal government, I'm not going to go into the facts of the case. And I don't think that's a good road to go down. The complaints of discrimination were not helpful. So the investigator, through a great deal of investigation, did not find cause for those complaints, the initial complaints. They found cause for the retaliation complaint and made a recommendation based on that. Without going into the facts of the case, I wonder what path could have been gone down given, and it's hard to do it without talking about the facts of the case. And I'm not going. So I find it shaky. I find the conclusion shaky. And I wish there were more detail about that. What we have, for those of you who, which is most everyone who has not read this, is many pages detailing the investigation, detailing what seems to me to be management suggestions, management consulting, and then a paragraph at the end about the retaliation complaint. Many pages of management consulting and a brief remark about the retaliation complaint, which is the crux of the thing. I have concerns about that. There's no question that, as Commissioner Johnson pointed out, since before any of us, before I was a commissioner 3.5 years ago, this organization has needed something like a organizational culture audit. No question, because I will remind everyone, this is not the first time that we have had complaints against charter officers. We can't fire our way out of a culture problem. We have tried to. We can't do it. There is a culture problem that existed prior to this commission and continues to exist. We can't solve that problem tonight. I think clearly we all intend to go down a path of getting some help on that. But that is a separate issue, I think, from what's in front of us with the manager's tenure here. We do need to have a discussion about what professional development means, about what that path is, how that works. And it's more than about second chances, I think. It's about the reality that we cannot fire our way out of a problem of that is a result of culture. I think we tried that 2 years ago and ended up in a similar place. And I don't think that's a path to go down again. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I wanted to reiterate, one, what you had said earlier, but explain why I have a lack of confidence in the report. So I read it with my attorney hat on, and one of the things I noticed is it's appeared to me that conclusions really hinged on conversations that had allegedly been had. The first thing they teach you in law school is hearsay. That's one of the first things they teach you about evidence, where, you know, if I was told by someone that they would say X, and now I'm offering it up as testimony of what they said, that to me is shaky at its absolute best. I don't consider it sufficient to go to the nuclear option of termination. Is there a culture problem? Definitely. I noticed it when I was a neighbor. I'm noticing it now from the dais. But I also know what termination does to the institution. As someone who tried to work with the city government on many things while they had an interim, because termination and resignation seemed to be the only options, it was not good for the city. It was not a healthy choice for the city. And I think Commissioner Ward is right. We can't fire our way out of culture problems. What we can do is try to rehabilitate the problem. We can try to address it, we can try to grow from it, but we can't fire our way out of a problem. I ultimately think Mr. Feldman made the better hiring choice. And I don't want us to set a dangerous precedent where if someone is not hired, even though they aren't the best ranked person for the job, but if they feel slighted, that they then allege discrimination or harassment or, retaliation. I don't want us to set that precedent because I want us to have a healthy city government where we can promote from within, but if we find brilliant talent that wants to come to Gainesville, that we can hire it without bad blood. So I am standing by my motion. I think, given that Mr. Feldman had been here only a couple of months when not even, when the first allegation came forward and then the other, I think it's a matter of a learning curve. I think that with sufficient training and professional development, we can avoid issues like this in the future and we can grow from it as an institution. I have the utmost confidence in Mr. Feldman. Just in my 6 months that I've been here, I have seen very good things that he can do. He is a very experienced city manager. I think his one downfall was he wasn't experienced in city of Gainesville culture and how to work with that dynamic. And I don't think he's alone. Earlier today when I was speaking with the city auditor, she mentioned that she had asked our HR director on how hiring would work, just to clarify the policy, because she is learning from this situation. And that's why I asked her about this proposal and if she'd be okay with it, and she agreed that it sounded like a good idea. But Mr. Feldman is not the only one who could fall into this trap. And that's why I think rather than terminate, which is such a final and ultimately not helpful option, that we could work with something that lets us grow and become a stronger institution with better processes. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Commissioner Simmons.
Mayor, I just have a question because I'm really confused. We keep throwing around the words professional development, learning curve, need sufficient training. How much professional development does a professional with 20 plus years experience need? Help me understand that. I'm confused because we keep saying learning curve, need professional development. He's made a mistake. This is just, I'm just confused because the previous city manager had only a couple of years experience, managerial experience, not a master's degree in public administration, which was a requirement for this particular position. I can go on and on and on. But I'm just confused. 20 plus years, and we're still talking about professional development and learning curves? I'm just confused. Help me understand. Excellent credentials. An author, professional development. I'm confused.
Commissioner Ariola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank my colleagues for speaking their minds, and I wish to address some of the issues and hopefully properly characterize my positions. First, I cannot support the motion because the motion does not adequately address the conduct that was found in the report. It's very serious. There is no professional development counseling idea that changes those facts. And I want you all to be very clear. I am setting aside my personal feelings because in this year, the city of Gainesville, the staff and the officers have been demanded more than any other set probably in the history of this city. And this conduct still occurred. This is not an evaluation of a job performance. We have to set aside our personal feelings. I am dismayed to hear some of the statements disparaging the facts of the report. For two reasons. Number one, how can we ask our officers to have these processes in place to conduct these types of investigations if the commission is not going to take the findings seriously? What kind of confidence does that give our employees? Whether or not we agreed with the ultimate decision of hiring, in my view, is irrelevant, because that is not our decision to make either way. What is at issue here is the conduct of an officer and the findings of fact, and not just hearsay. There is finding of fact. There is evidence of which I will not sully this dais. But there is evidence. It's in there. Commissioner asked what could have been done to avoid. In my first statements, I said there was advisement given to take time off. Any professional will tell you that's the right thing to do to allow for a cool down period. That advisement was rejected. That would have been the professional thing to do. And I've heard a couple of my colleagues say the statement that we can't fire our way out of culture problems. I hope you all don't think that that's what I'm suggesting, because it isn't. There are two problems. The cultural problem that we all agree with is a problem. That is a separate issue from the misconduct that is going on at the highest level of our government. And I cannot look the other way. I will not look the other way. I am not suggesting this lightly or easily. And I would certainly prefer to be anywhere else than this chamber having this discussion. But not for the conduct of our officer, we would not be. I can't support this motion, commissioners. I cannot support this motion. I wish for the commissioners who disagree with me that you would take my perspective seriously. Because we share the same organizational goals of equity, of progress in the city of Gainesville. We disagree tremendously on how this city commission is supposed to hold its officers accountable. And it would be going against my very values to support a motion which frankly looks the other way. It looks the other way. And how we go forward from here will be very important. I see more lights. I'll hear from my colleagues. There was one more issue I wanted to raise tonight because I don't believe we'll ever have a discussion pertinent to this again. And it doesn't have to do with the city manager. It has to do with the city commission. So I will wait to make that comment once we hear the rest of the matter. Thank you.
Commissioner Simmons?
And I just want to be clear, this is nothing personal, but to use the words professional and learning curve to me is unacceptable with the extensive body of work. So again, this is nothing personal. I have an expectation. We should all have an expectation. Thank you.
Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There have been a couple of references to a cooling off period or taking to the manager taking himself out of the equation for some period of time during the investigation. The investigation went on for 10 months. I don't understand how it took 10 months to get here. I really don't. I had asked a number of times privately where we were on it. It's ongoing. It's ongoing. I don't know what our policy is, honestly, for how long an investigation of this sort is supposed to take. If the manager had taken a 10-month leave of absence, I don't know how we would have been willing to accept that. I don't know how this took 10 months to get to this place. I really don't. I know COVID. I get it. I don't think this is hundreds of days of necessity here. Anyway, I think it's important to note that, though.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I think that that's a good question. I think maybe Ms. Marshall can answer why it took 10 months.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Marshall, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So when these complaints were first filed with my office, I initially started to conduct the investigations myself. But after a series of interviews that left me feeling like I needed to recuse myself, I actually reached out to a couple of different law firms to figure out who we wanted to contract this complaint out to. That happened in March of this year. And literally within days, we were shut down because of the global pandemic. And that forced us to stop and restart our operations virtually. As you've seen the report, there were close to 30 individuals that were interviewed. Initially, when these complaints started in the conversations that I had previously had with the commission, I explained that when the two complaints were filed, this could have been a pretty quick investigation because a lot of the witnesses were the same, and I could do this investigation rather quickly. But again, after some conversations with city staff, I felt that it was best to contract this out. And again, we had a global pandemic that happened in the middle. There were almost 30 people that were interviewed virtually. Some of those people were interviewed more than once. 2 of the 3 parties actually had representation, which requires us to then coordinate with their attorneys' schedules. So some of those things actually help delay this process. It took the length of time that it took. I will tell you, as a seasoned investigator, that you never know what you're going to experience or get into until you get into that investigation. Again, some of those witnesses were interviewed more than once. So it took a length of time. And again, we ended up having a retaliation complaint thrown into the initial 2 complaints, which further complicated the investigation. So that helped lengthen the time as well.
Thanks, Ms. Marshall. I also want to be clear that this is, it's not personal in the way that I will be the first to admit that I think that Mr. Feldman has made significant progress on some things that all of us care about. And then, I asked myself, well, the progress is at what cost? And in the past, I know that people have been willing to look past certain things in the name of or in service of progress, or in service of some goals that this commission might have had or individual people might have. And that to me is problematic, because if we are willing at the very highest level to overlook what is very clear in this report, then that begs the question, well, what else are we overlooking? And what else are we allowing? And then that speaks to, once again, the culture of this organization. So I think we need to take all of that into consideration when we're deliberating and debating this. What, as a commission at the highest level, are we allowing? What are we allowing our charter officers to do? And then what kind of tone is that setting for the rest of the organization? And is that in service of the culture that we want to build here? Thank you.
Commissioner Ward?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to point out that, I'll tell you the same thing I told Ms. Marshall. I believe it was the right move to outsource this. My concern is more with the vendor and the time that the vendor took with this than Ms. Marshall. I think she did the right thing. It is difficult, if not impossible, for peers to investigate peers. And outsourcing this to a law firm out of town was the right thing to do from her perspective. I told her that, and I continue to stand by that. I also believe this was a very, very long time to wait. And my point behind that was that if Mr. Feldman had removed himself from the situation for what sounded like it was going to be a relatively brief investigation, we would have had a problem with that as well, because it ended up not being a brief investigation. So just wanted to make that clear.
Commissioner Simmons?
Practicing social distancing.
Yeah, we do need to be 6 feet apart. We need to be 6 feet apart. Please, Mr. Scott, please, we just need to be 6 feet apart. That's it. We're just trying
Yeah,
to keep people
somebody
alive.
come on the
That's
other
it.
side, yeah.
We just want people to be alive.
That was my.
That's it. Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's in 4 or 5 parts, basically, that we receive the report, that we work on a professional development plan that works on ensuring that there's consistency with the core values of the city, that we work with the charter officers to review and come up with a better process for complaints filed against charter officers, that we review the authority to hire policy and work on any inconsistencies that are in the current policy, and that we ask the city auditor to come back with a cultural audit plan. And so anybody that would like to speak to the motion may come forward. I'm going to ask you to do a couple things. One, maintain social distancing. Keep your mask on when you're speaking. If you can avoid it, please try not to touch the lectern or the microphone. We will have one of our community builders come up and clean the lectern and everything around it between each speaker. But the more we can avoid touching, the better we'll all be. Again, our primary goal is to keep people alive. After that, we encourage your First Amendment rights in this chamber. So just introduce yourself. You'll have 3 minutes. A little yellow light will come on when you have 1 minute left, and then when the red light comes on, your time is expired, and I'll call up the next speaker. Ms. Beatty, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. First of all, I'd like to thank Commissioner Simmons. She kind of beat me a little bit to what I was going to say. You do have seats and you do have partitions spaced the same way you are all spaced to protect you. I think that you've got neighbors here who are standing, and to not invite them somehow to have a seat when there are empty chairs is wrong. I just want to speak a little bit to this process and to the way that you have not included the public in this. As I understand, and I think Mr. Areola confirmed, that on last Monday, which was the 16th, the report was received. If I understood him correctly, it was that day or the next day that he asked for a special meeting. You had a meeting on the 19th. This item was on the meeting without any backup. There are, as Ms. Johnson said, I think she said there were 1,600 pages in the report. Those pages, that should have been available to the public so that we could make informed comments on this if we chose to. Not only was it not attached to that meeting agenda, but the backup wasn't even attached to today's meeting agenda. And for a commission that prides itself and claims to be open and transparent and inclusive, this really flies in the face of that assertion. Ms. Johnson, I hope you were right. I hope everybody read that. That's certainly very voluminous to read and to study, and certainly the public was not afforded that opportunity. Some people were able to get that with a public records request, I think yesterday. And so I think as maybe Mr. Areola is going to bring up later, you know, in terms of culture, you really need to take a look at what you're doing and how you're including the people who are your employers. You like to call them neighbors. We are your employers. And so that being said, I'll let you get on with your deliberations, but you've left the public out of this process once again. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. If you'll just, give us a moment. Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion?
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure you, am I clear?
You're fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we have a lot of values that we talk about, so on and so forth. Many of you up there use words like equity. You talk about being diverse, and a lot of it just seems to be rhetoric. And to sit here and look me in the face, let's go back. We've had conversations about diversity and equity before. This is nothing new. You all act like this is some kind of test. And I find it really rich. When certain demographics come before you, it seems credible. And when certain other demographics come before you, it's not so much credible. And so it just seems to me that I hear folks talk about, we're pro-women. And then I hear women, I guess, certain women, if these folks that were claiming 26 women, 26, and you all are going to sit there and say, this isn't credible, that sounds very Trumpian to me. Really rich. And some of you up on that dais right now are in this report. You should absolutely be recusing yourselves. Some of you, if we had this a surname like a Hispanic surname, if this was Armando or Rosalita, then maybe you would be finding that this would be credible. But I guess Latoya or Becky or Elizabeth, they're not credible. There seems to be a level and air of sexism in this commission. And it's disgusting. And to hear somebody as an officer of the court who is not a city attorney talk about trying to harangue Tanisha Marshall, which some of you have done, and I have receipts, to harangue Tanisha Marshall, to harangue Nicole Shalley, it's shameful. If you're not a city attorney, you might be a city commissioner, but you're not a city attorney. And you know what? 26 people did not lie. And this guy is a pathological liar. And Mr. Mayor, I have something I want to submit for the record about what he has lied about. You all didn't harangue him about having no bid contracts, but you want to harangue Tanisha Marshall about how long this investigation took and how much it cost. But he wants to have a meeting in February with us in the middle of a pandemic on March 17th, and not one of you all said anything about it. Not one of you. And I wrote it. And I want to know why that's okay. And you want to sit up here and act like this is okay. Your rhetoric means nothing. You can show me better than you can tell me. Tell all those women that they're
Thank
full
you,
of
Mr.
nonsense.
Grundy. Thanks for
You all are
comments.
nonsense.
Mr. Grundy, thank you. Your time is expired. If
Ms.
you
Carter,
want to leave the public, whatever you want, you can leave it.
Racist
and we'll
and
take
bigot.
it. Thank you, Mr. Grundy. 1 second, let me reset. Next speaker? I'm sorry.
Can you restart the time?
Yes, I
wasn't
can.
at the podium yet.
Yes, I can. I'm new to this.
Good evening, Nathan Scubb. I'm uncertain how the City Commission can have a special meeting to discuss these discrimination complaints with absolutely no backup documents attached to support this agenda item. As Ms. Beatty mentioned, it appears that the media reports had far more information than the public regarding this agenda item, which prompted public records requests to get some transparency regarding this matter. The city took the extraordinary step of retaining an external law firm at taxpayer expense to conduct an independent legal investigation of the discrimination complaints. This independent legal investigation determined that there was sufficient cause to terminate the city manager. In the wake of this independent legal investigation report prepared at taxpayer expense, I'm astonished as a member of the Florida Bar and as a city taxpayer that the mayor and the majority of the Gainesville City Commission are so willing and eager to make excuses and ignore the findings of fact that the independent legal investigation made regarding these discrimination complaints. Commissioner Simmons, you are spot on. Equally concerning, as mentioned by Mr. Grundy, are the numerous sole source contracts awarded by the city manager, which seem to favor people he worked with previously in Fort Lauderdale. Actions speak louder than words, commissioners. You preach equity and non-discriminatory workplace, but ignore the independent legal investigation concluding that discrimination did in fact occur. Your actions don't pass the smell tests and reek of hypocrisy, commissioners. Mayor Poe, your endless excuse-making, virtue signaling, and your blatant disregard of the independent legal investigation prepared at taxpayer expense further illustrates your failed leadership of city government. You've been here many years. Why do we have all these problems? Why do we have to hire a consultant at every meeting? That's not going to fix the problem. It's equally disappointing to see Commissioner Saka, who's also a member of the Florida Bar, seemingly offer a prepared motion to sweep the independent legal investigation under the carpet prior to having a full discussion from the dais. In closing, it's clear that we need better governance from the mayor and Gainesville City Commission. It will be interesting to see how much legal expense of taxpayer money the commission incurs in litigation costs to defend the lawsuits resulting from its failure to act on these discrimination complaints. Commissioner Ward, you had the audacity to say most everyone who has not read the reports. Well, that's because the documents were not attached to the agenda item and were not readily available to the public. You can virtue signal all you want, but the public can't read what they don't have. That's on you, commissioners. That's your failed leadership, Mayor Poe. Those documents, as Ms. Beatty stated, are not made available to the public. So it's hypocrisy to expect somebody to come in here and have read documents they don't have access to. Why is that? So hiring more consultants at every single city commission meeting isn't going to help get you out of the problem that you're making excuses about. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Khalid Blount, Gainesville resident. I'll be very brief. I just want to see this body show that the label charter is not an armor against accountability. Charters put their pants on one leg at a time like everybody else, and they have to be accountable and responsible for what their actions cause. And I wish to see you exert leadership. I've been a little disappointed lately in the city about the idea of leadership. I think that this body has not exerted enough leadership to keep this city safer in the current circumstances. And this is a chance to prove some real leadership and follow through on accountability.
Welcome.
Bob Cohen, Mayor and Commissioners. I've talked to most of you about the issue. I've followed the city for a long time and served on various boards and done a whole series of EO mediations, so I'm familiar with the subject matter. When we look at the big picture, we've wanted a city manager, and I was part of the interview process for Mr. Feldman, who would come and do the needful to shake up government. Now, I'll tell a little anecdote. I've had a senior city employee when I was chairing the plan board, and I objected to that, you're just not following the code. And he said to me, I don't have to. Really said this, the city commission's going to change. Every year, we have an election, it changes. They don't know what's going on. I'm doing it my way. Now, that was an extreme example, but there's been quite a few examples of that. So finally, we have a city manager who's willing to say, we're going to, and has the experience and know-how, we're going to bring some real organization city. What happens when he's here? The first thing is, an EO complaint is done on gender discrimination. Did he say anything nasty? Did he do anything odd? No, he didn't give a woman, he reassigned a woman at the same salary. That complaint, what was the end result? Nothing. 200 days later, nothing. Now, I understand why it took 200 days. Then what happened is the same person says it's retaliation because she didn't get the position. Now, we do have an outside officer who said, well, it looked like retaliation. I read the report. I couldn't see it that way. I just couldn't see it. As a commission, it behooves you to look, how did we get here? What were the instructions given to that outside attorney? How did we end up with a conclusion like this? We need to take our time and look at these things and look at the whole process. We have a manager who's actually finally getting something done. Some staff gets upset. There's a problem with it. In January, you do the reviews, and you can deal with it if he hasn't improved the city. Personally, I think he's improved the city quite a bit. Professional development, he knows what he's doing. But when you come to Gainesville, it's different than other cities. Anybody will tell you that. So to me, that means getting to understand how Gainesville works. And one of the sad truths of how Gainesville works is we do throw people out too easily. So I urge you to approve this motion. Thank you very much for.
Thank you. Okay, would anybody else like to speak on the motion? Lovely. There you go. Thanks. Want to set a good example for the kids out there.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I just wanted to echo some of the comments of Bob over there and speak in support of Manager Feldman. I think he's done an incredible job. You guys have read the reports. Obviously, it's a little divided today, but I hope there's a motion before you that I support. It sounds like you guys are doing a great job in threading the needle. I ask that you look at Mr. Feldman's entire body of work. I've been on the front lines since March, and so has he. And I can tell you things have been improved with him working here. And I also think this is not something that you can fire your way out of, like you said. I think things have got better. There's a process. There is culture issues here. And I think Mr. Feldman is the person to work on those issues. It will be difficult. I think amongst all of you, you can, and staff, you can craft something to continue moving us in the right direction. It's been refreshing for some of us out there in the field to see some of the changes. They have been difficult, I can tell you that. He's pushed us as well. I've had to be a little uncomfortable, and but he's pushed us to grow. We have provided an insane amount of service to this city by Mr. Feldman coming up with ideas and pushing us. And we wouldn't have done that under previous managers. So again, I'd like to speak in support of Manager Feldman. I hope you can thread the needle and find a way to move forward and continue growing the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, would anybody else like to speak? Going once. Going twice. Okay, we'll close public comment and turn back to the commission. We do have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Ariel.
Public comment on the.
Oh, yes. I'm so sorry. Thanks for, I was not even aware that you were there. Go ahead.
All righty. We've got several public commenters tonight.
very good.
Mr. Gabe Kamowitz, you are now on the line and you have about 3 minutes.
Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kamowitz, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Okay, my name is Gabe Kamowitz. I'm having trouble with hearing the process, but some general remarks I would like to make. I have to say that
Sir,
I am a lawyer.
Mr. Kamowitz, can you mute your background? Can you mute your background? Turn your computer down, and we'll start your time again. If you can just turn your computer down, we're getting a bit of an echo. I'll start your 3 minutes again.
I'm not sure I can hear. I apologize to you all. I have a hearing problem, and I don't know whether I'm to speak or whether I'm to wait.
Go ahead, sir.
if I'm to speak, I want to question a number of things that have been said. Number one, I'm familiar with some of the witnesses. I would, number one, disagree with Commissioner Johnson's characterization that the issue may be one of honesty on the part of the city manager. In fact, there was at least one key witness who I can document has a history of not being very accurate. But aside from that, I object to this whole process. I think you have to recognize that it harkens back to the termination or the forced removal of Commissioner of City Manager Lyons. Both Lyons and the current city manager come from different backgrounds from Gainesville, but both will be familiar with the law. The law should be governed by section, the Charter 210 about interference with officers. The separate investigation of the city manager is totally contrary to law. It previously happened with the city manager Lyons. The EO officer, as much as I respect her, doesn't have a clue apparently about what the regulations she's supposed to be following are. She claims not to know the history, and she doesn't. The history did not begin with giving the EO charter officers something that they didn't have previously. It was a long struggle that resulted from the close down of the EO office in the 1990s, and then the attempt to create the first office that would include an opportunity for a black to be a charter officer in this city. This is supposedly a manager commission city. It's not. You all just start to run your scam and start talking as if you have complete authority. You can fire the city auditor, you can fire the city manager, you can go from one to another, you can talk about culture.
I think your time is up, sir. Mr. Comowitz, your time is up, I'm afraid. And we'll turn to our next call.
It doesn't matter. I'll get out.
Okay.
Have a good day.
You too. Thank you, sir. We'll turn to our next caller in a second. For all of our callers, if you can hear me, please lower your background devices, whether that's your laptop or your television. Otherwise, we get a little bit of an echo going through the commentary in the comment period. We'll turn to Sam next. Sam, you've got 3 minutes beginning right now.
Thank you. I may be restating points, but I'm not happy with the removal of documents concerning this meeting from the city's website. Sure, you could request them, but that entails you knew the documents were there to request. The GNV-SPAN article wasn't published, you would have known what this meeting was about. Unlike this decision was made to intentionally keep the city of Gainesville's residents uninformed as to the true purpose of the meeting. Concerning the findings of the hired law firm, I've voiced as well to respond to the mayor's comments that he read the report several times and saw no evidence of retaliation. Page 35 of 37 of Ms. Wilson's findings, perhaps you missed the last sentence that says, accordingly, the undersigned finds there is cause to believe that Feldman retaliated against Wilson for filing a complaint of gender discrimination that a violation of city policy occurred. This is important. This recommendation recommended the termination of the city manager based on retaliation. If you go against this recommendation, you're telling each and every employee of the city that retaliation is okay to shut up, not complain, or you'll be punished. Legally, this is a finding by an external law firm that's continuing to employ the city manager, open the city up to civil lawsuits that the city is likely to lose. Is it fair to even ask the city legal team to defend the city manager when they know an external recommendation was made to terminate them? How much will that defense cost the city, and how much will a settlement cost the city if one is made? Will civil or other lawsuits be brought against the city manager and thus the city? If it continues to be employed, will the city then be forced to spend money defending itself? Will the city's council speak to this in just a moment after I finish the rest of my comments? Finally, I'd like to ask yourself to do two things. Put yourself in the place of people who made these reports and in the place of other people who have experienced or may experience this or similar situations. Would you feel safe and want to work with a city that respected its employees or one where findings of retaliations are ignored? This is the real question that each of the commissioners need to ask themselves. Thank you.
We'll turn to our next caller. That would be Siri. Siri, you have 3 minutes. Siri, go ahead, please. Your phone is ending in 2471.
All right. Hi, my name is Siri. I am really worried about the city government. I want you to put yourself into the shoes of the city's employees and watching this. The city of Gainesville hired an outside law firm to investigate harassment, discrimination, and retaliation by the city manager. As a side note, no one could read the report unless they requested, and I know this because the Gainesville Sun has read the article. The law firm found that the city manager retaliated against and employees of the city, and the law firm further recommended firing the city manager for this. And then I was listening to you guys, and some of you guys we have their own opinions, but come to realization, come to the fact. My point is, if the commission disregard of this third-party investigation and their recommendation, I don't know, why would any employee should trust and this organization? My point is, I hope the city make the right decision for its employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Siri. Our next caller is Ms. Miles Hamilton. Ms. Miles Hamilton, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. And good evening, Mayor and Commissioners.
Go ahead.
This City Commission, the City Manager, and other chartered officers should set clear examples of the culture of equity and fairness within this organization. More than 25 years ago, I personally experienced some of the same alleged accusations of discrimination. And today, in 2020, we are addressing some of the same issues of injustices. It is shameful and unacceptable. I want to challenge you tonight to stand tall for equity and fairness. A culture of discrimination in any circumstance is not good in any shape or form. And this city manager came here with many years of experience. Professional development is highly questionable, and especially for a seasoned employee. Dr. Martin Luther King stated that an injustice anywhere is a threat to all of us everywhere. It's past time in the city to end the culture of many biases. Please, let's not perpetuate this divisive culture and be accountable. With the number of complaints, the saying goes, where there's smoke, fire is surely close. I want to thank you tonight, and please make the right decision.
Thank you, Ms. Miles Hamilton. Our next caller is Ms. Debbie Martinez. Ms. Martinez, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Sure can.
Thank you so much. My name's Debbie Martinez, and I believe the real problem is Mayor Poe. Mr. Poe continually encourages this commission, as he did with past commissions, to take on too many unnecessary and reckless projects without adequate supervision and accountability. Mr. Poe has been here for over a dozen years, getting us into one disaster after another, firing one charter officer after another. It started with firing the GRU general manager, Mr. Hunzinger, for the unnecessary and irresponsible multi-billion-dollar biomass tree burner debacle, the worst utility contract in the country that Mr. Poe championed. This has cost our taxpayers dearly. One costly lawsuit after another, and one costly consultant after another. This has cost GRU customers dearly, leaving us with the highest electric rates in the state, creating poverty and suffering, all at the hands of Mr. Poe, and it never seems to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Next, we have Mr. Donald Fields. Mr. Fields, you have 3 minutes. Mr. Fields, are you still out there?
Sorry, I was on mute.
All good. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Am I on, huh?
Yes, you are.
Hello, commissioners. This is Donald Fields. I have heard people talking and not really addressing the facts. I've heard only the assertions from people that, one, there's nothing there, and two, there's deeply troubling things there. And since I don't have access to the evidence, and I'm not sure the commission does either, is this an ongoing investigation that the facts aren't in front of you? How can you possibly make a decision without knowing what the facts are? How can you make a judgment of what the facts say unless you know what they are? And are you expected to fire or keep the city manager, Mr. Feldman, based solely on things that you don't know? I'm puzzled by how you can go forth with any motion on this other than to decide that you need to fire him now so that you can have control of the damage that was done, or you need to keep him now to avoid further different kinds of damage and the suit from wrongful termination. I don't know how you go forward without the facts. And if there are 30 people that have been interrogated or given depositions, you need to know what they've said and how they all relate together. So it just astounds me that you're able to actually hold a position without knowing the facts. Is that the case? It just amazes me if it is. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next, we have Mr. Walter Berry. Mr. Berry?
Yes, I am. Okay. Turn this down just a second.
Yes, sir. And then you have 3 minutes.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, thanks for letting me speak. My name is Walt Berry. I know most of you and have discussed this item with several of you. And ironically, it seems to me that the process that is being challenged here, or has nothing to do with the outcome, which in fact allowed a broadening of the diversity of some of your senior managers. I think that I would first of all encourage you and endorse the motion that's on the floor, and look forward to having discussions more broadly about the culture of the organization of the city. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and my best wishes, and I applaud your willingness to listen to all of the folks who have opinions to express. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Our next caller is Ms. Hildreth. Ms. Hildreth, you have 3 minutes.
Hey, I'm sorry, I'm using somebody else's phone. This is Mary Lou Hildreth. Man, I'm about in tears. I've known Lee Feldman since 2006. He is a man of character. He was mild spoken. Let me just step back for a minute and agree that the documents, which I was fortunate to get Monday morning, but I mean, I don't have time to read War and Peace at my job in between now. And so this morning I got a text from a dear friend of mine who's a former mayor of a very large city in Florida to ask me what was going on. And I spoke with him over coffee, and, you know, his kind of 30,000 level was that, you know, the apple cart got turned upset and a few bad apples, you know, fell out. I mean, if you're underperforming and you're called on it and then you make a complaint, that sets a precedent for any time you don't like your boss and you say, you know, oh, you know, gender, and not to discount their claims, but yet again, it's like you'll have a new city manager every other year, and the problem is, it's been stated, it's well known that the culture of the city of Gainesville, you know, employees, you know, they've been kind of floundering around forever. They had departments within departments. They didn't have any true direction, and they kind of, you know, went along their merry way, and now they're being called out on it. And within 2 months of him being hired, they're saying, oh, you know, it's gender discrimination, it's this or that. And again, I mean, I've read parts of it, I printed out parts of it, I have it here highlighted where I'm sitting, but, you know, there are certain departments that definitely need an overhaul, and I will tell you, HR is one of them. And I could give you examples of that, but I think everybody needs to be held to a higher standard. You know, and Lee is the biggest, most professional person I know. I was so happy that he got this position, and I thought it was going to be great. And yes, they come in, they reorganize, and that's what they do. And people just get, butt hurt is what I would call it. And, you know, to recognize that there has been a problem. And yes, most of the stuff, everything I read was hearsay. He said, she said, I was at the meeting, she was crying, she wasn't crying, whatever. You know, it's, and if you just keep firing people, because I'm just beyond the moon right now. And I do think that, you know, it did take 10 months to get here. And that's all I got. I'm pretty upset. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Hildreth. Next caller is Mr. Brian O'Brien. Mr. O'Brien, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adam. And thank you, Mr. Poe and Commission. I was able to read 2 reports, some 1,400 pages of documentation regarding the complaints and the investigation. And at this point, I only have one question. Mr. Poe, is it true that you have, from the dais, cast an opinion characterizing these complaints as petty stuff? I'll wait for your answer, sir.
I didn't hear the question.
Mr. O'Brien, can you repeat the question?
Should I repeat the question, Adam?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mayor Poe, is it true that you have characterized the subject matter of these reports as, quote, petty stuff, unquote, from the dais, as mentioned in the report? That's the question, sir.
Heavy stuff? Heady? I don't believe I use those words.
Mr. O'Brien, please continue.
I'm sorry?
Please continue.
I'm asking Mayor Poe the question.
He said
I'm waiting for the answer.
I believe he said that he did not describe it as so.
It's part of the evidence in the report, sir. Well, should I look up the video to that? I'd be happy to. I'll get back to you shortly. Thank you. Into my comments.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Mayor, Council, that is the last of our public comments. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'll give last one opportunity for anybody here in the chamber who might want to speak. Okay, we'll turn back to the commission. Commissioner Ariola, I'm going to advise you to make any other comments you had now. For special meetings, we are not allowed to discuss items not on the agenda, and there's no opportunity for general commission comments. So we'll do that, and then we'll move to a vote.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. As I stated, the commission, per our policy, was in receipt of the report. We were told to keep that information confidential because neither party of the investigation had received that report. Before those parties received that report, I started receiving calls of people who should not have had access to that, leaving me to come to only one conclusion: that somebody on this commission broke confidentiality. I take that very seriously because as a commissioner, it is our job to maintain the integrity of our process and the sanctity of that process and confidentiality, not just for the commission's benefit, not just for the government's benefit, but for our employees to have confidence in the process of filing serious complaints. How are our employees supposed to take it if, when those complaints are filed, they are not treated by the city commission with respect for confidentiality?
So, Commissioner, now we could get the attorney to weigh in on this, but I did not share the report with anybody, but my understanding, because this came up from the attorney, is that once it was given to us, it was a public record. And Madam Attorney, if you can comment on that, because I did ask that question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and City Commissioners. It did become a public record once it was distributed to you, but it's my understanding, and I'll defer to Ms. Marshall, that the EO office or the Office of Equity and Inclusion has certain procedures in place in which they distribute their findings first to the City Commission. So you could consume it, ask questions if need be, as I think what happened with some commissioners, and then it gets distributed to the complainant and the accused, so to speak.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, that is correct. When I distributed the findings to the city commission, I actually drafted a letter stating that the parties had not been notified yet. In our policy and our process, it requires us to distribute it to the commission first for any type of questions that you may have regarding the findings themselves before we distribute those to the parties.
But it also is a public record.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Commissioner, do you conclude?
No, thank you. I appreciate clarification on the policy. Whether or not commissioners are now fielding public records requests and disseminating that information is not for debate right now. From my point of view, is this commission going to take its charter officers' policy seriously or not? There is a big gulf between where this motion is, where I am, I won't speak for my colleagues, in how this government is proceeding with respect to confidentiality, with respect to conduct. We have our disagreements on policy, don't mind that. I very much mind when we have deviations from professionalism in following the policy that we expect city employees and officers to follow. As I said, I will not support this motion. I believe it does not address the issues that were raised in the report. There has not even been a tertiary discussion on what professional development looks like. And frankly, my confidence is shaken in actually wanting to address the cultural issue if we cannot even handle appropriately, professionally handling this report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Simmons.
And I just wanted to answer your question. I did not give out any information. Although she just stated that it was public information, I did not do anything of that matter. So it was given to us in confidence from our charter officer with strict instructions. And so I abide by those instructions. I just wanted to make that clear and make it for the record.
Thank you, Commissioner. So we will now move to a vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Okay, that motion passes 4-3 with Simmons, Areola, and Johnson in dissent. Did I get that right? Is that everybody right? Okay. Thank you all very much. There's no further business before us this evening, so this meeting is adjourned.